Hey guys, and welcome to this new video. In this one, we're gonna start sculpting our details onto the axe. And for all of you that didn't watch the previous video where we did the block out, I highly recommend to do so, especially if you want to know how to get to this state. But yeah, let's just begin. And let's just do it as in the previous video. So I will leave the time-lapse video in the background and just explain a few things. So how we are attempting this, we will be using Dynamesh mainly, and yeah, the main brushes that we will be using is the trim dynamic, but also a bit of damp standard, clay build up, the move brush, trim smooth border for the cracks. And maybe some fundamentals first. So in general, not only for an asset like this, but for every asset, think about where the details matter the most first. So in this case, it's obviously the blade, but you don't want to really overdo the details. You have to pay attention to have a good balance between, in this case, clean details and also some wear and stuff like that. But you don't really want to overdo this, as with every asset, you also want to have a bit rest for the eyes, so it's not overcrowded with details everywhere. And with the axe here, I'm starting with the blade, and we are going for a sloppy forged and hammered look, but rather soft as well. And this actually makes it a bit easier because there's no need to be too precise, so I can be a bit sloppy here and there, and it will just add to the look of it. And yeah, you also need to know when to stop. I mean, I spent like 4 hours on this axe here, I think, and still at the end I could have go on and add more and more details, but there's a point where you just really have to stop, where it's good enough, and it doesn't need to be perfect. Just go for a look that you really like, and yeah, just know when to stop basically. So every asset needs to be finished at some point, right? And then we can still add some extra details when texturing the whole thing in Instamat. You can add some nice normal details. So I didn't add any high frequency details in Zbrush this time. I will be adding some scratches and stuff like this in Instamat, and also some, so to say, pores on the metal. And yeah, in general, when you start sculpting, it's a really, for me at least, a really satisfying and relaxing process, but it's also a grind. So a good idea is often to listen to some music while doing this, or even a podcast maybe. And as you can see in the background here, I had symmetry turned on. And at some point, I messed it up a bit. I don't know if it was the model itself and I did a mistake in Blender, or I did something wrong in Zbrush, but doesn't really matter. In this case, it just adds up to the details, as we don't want to have the same details on both of the sides of the blade. So we want to have a really distinct look between both sides. And yeah, in this case, it just did me a favor basically. So it's one of those happy accidents, like let's say, that will just add to the immersion. And yeah, at first I was focusing on the blade mainly, get some of the base details going, like some big cracks. And you always have to think like this. You start with the big details first, and then you go smaller and smaller. So we just want to wrap up the base first and do the coarse details on this. And the more we advance, we will start adding more smaller details. And yeah, for sculpting in general, I really recommend to use a tablet. It's possible with the mouse as well, but yeah, you need to do an absurd amount of clicks. It's not really healthy for your joints and hands in general. So I really highly recommend to use a tablet. And if you do this regularly, there are quite some cheap alternatives. Like you can purchase Wacom Intuos, the smaller series, or not the Pro series, but the smaller ones. And I'm not sure how much they come today, but they are not really that pricey, and yeah, are good enough. I mean, I started with the Intuos size S, and yeah, it works really well. So you can do everything with this as with the bigger ones or the Pro ones. Currently I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro. It's just a bit bigger, and yeah, I like the pen more. But in general, you can do the same work with the smaller ones and the non-Pro versions as well. And yeah, for RX, you can see I added those hammered details with the standard brush and the spray mode. And now I'm using the trim dynamic again to break this up a bit. So all those details that we are adding, you don't want to have them too straight in your face, but you want to keep really a balance between details that you maybe don't even notice, but they are still there. So that's really important, that you also have details that are not noticeable when you look at it, but they are still there and they are adding to the immersion really. And I think, as you already saw the main workflow here, so using trim dynamic to smoothen up the surface, a bit of damp standard to define the top part here, also a bit of clay build up to basically to fix some things that are not so nice. Yeah, we used the move brush a bit, and I think we already used trim smooth border for the cracks. I have a short on this, how you can sculpt really nice cracks. And as you can see, I don't really care if I do over sculpt, so to say. You can just fix it afterwards, and again, it adds to the immersion a bit. And yeah, now we're doing the Boolean operation with the cross. So I just appended 2 cubes and scaled them accordingly. I used the I positioned it where I wanted it, then I went to the live Boolean mode so you can see what you're doing. And if you're, as soon as you're ready, you press on this make Boolean mesh. And yeah, then I dynameshed it again and yeah, smoothed up a bit the edges as with the whole X. So we don't really want to have any real sharp corners or sharp parts and edges just on the blade. And again, we want to make it a bit so that it's not too eye-catching, but you still want to have some details. And as you can also see, what I like to do is when sculpting any asset, basically, I like to focus on one part, but I then also like to change to another part of the mesh, like even now to the metal details that are on the wood. Yeah, and then I like to return to the previous parts again and look at them with a fresh eye. And yeah, maybe I see something that I don't like anymore, but when you are focused at one part the whole time, you tend to first overdo it a bit, and then the details are maybe not as nice, but you don't notice it. So it's really good to return to those parts and recheck them and see if you like something or you don't like something, and then you can always change it. And for those metal parts here, I think I messed it up a bit in Blender because I didn't really pay attention to the symmetry. And they might be slightly different because I extruded them independently instead of just doing one and then mirror it. But as you can see, I'm not using symmetry here anymore. And again, we don't want to use symmetry the whole time. We want to have different details on both sides. So it shouldn't be looking the same from both sides as explained before. And now I wanted to do the rivets, and I just appended a cube and scaled it up accordingly. And yeah, I made some more of them, just copy and paste. So copying while pressing Ctrl Shift and D, it will make a copy of your mesh, or subtool as it's called in Zbrush. Then just place them accordingly. I merged all of them together and copied them. Yeah, and then I needed to mirror them so that they fit on the other side as well and follow the line or the detail. And yeah, then again, trim dynamic and yeah, sculpt it a bit so that it looks like metal or hammered metal. And yeah, I soloed it out to also be able to work on the sides of the subtool here. So again, it's quite nice that it's not a perfect X, but something rather sloppy. So I could be sloppy as well while sculpting that, and it still looks quite nice. I just went over all of them. And yeah, I think I also used a bit of the move brush to place them a bit better. As you can see, here we still had some sharp edges and I wanted to get rid of those. So solo out again and just, yeah, sculpt on the edges a bit. And again, it's a really satisfying process somehow. It can just, yeah, go around the edges and it feels really relaxing somehow. So yeah, I have a lot of fun with this. Also, again, it's quite a long process. So as mentioned, I often listen to some music while doing that, and then you can really dive into the whole process. And yeah, for the other side, I could have just copied them after I sculpted the details into it. But yeah, I wanted to have them look a bit differently. Also, that's a detail that you won't really pay attention. So it would be okay to just mirror them after you sculpted the details. But like this, you have a bit more control. And yeah, after I, not really finished it, but again, I like to focus on a different part a bit. So I took the handle and wanted to sculpt some wood details onto it. And yeah, for this, I just used the clay build-up brush. I think I also have a short on sculpting wood details. And it's quite fast and always looks quite good. most of the time my first pass is to use the clay build-up brush and then use the damp standard to make some crevices. Then use trim dynamic or even trim smooth border to flatten out some spots. So you always want to go for a bit of variance. You don't want everything to look the same. And I think this is the most important thing. You want to have variance everywhere. And now I basically went in to sculpt some of the more details, high frequency details, so to say, or in this case, I wanted to chisel up the edges a bit. And for this, I really like to use trim smooth border, not only for rocks, but basically for everything. And the details will look great. So it's a really awesome brush. It's one of my favorite brushes in Zbrush. But it also takes a while to really master this one. So when I first used it, it was really weird. But when you get used to that, it's a really awesome brush and you can make really awesome details. I mean, for example, when sculpting rocks, 90% of the time I use trim smooth border only. But yeah, also for this stuff, for example, chiseling up edges and making some edge wear, it's a really awesome brush. And again, as with all details, you don't want to overdo it. Just make a bit of wear here and there and not on the whole mesh. Maybe sculpt some cracks into it, some bigger ones. And yeah, just vary a bit. You really don't want to have this detail everywhere. So for example, there I wanted to chisel up or break up a bit of the back part of the axe. Yeah, then for making cracks, I like to use the clay build-up with pressing Alt and taking clay away, and then go in and make a pass with the trim smooth border. So basically the main workflow for this axe was, or at least for the blade, use trim dynamic to smoothen it up a bit and yeah, smoothen up the edges and stuff like that. Then sculpt some nicer details with clay build-up and trim smooth border. And yeah, as you can see, always or from time to time use Dynamesh again to remesh your asset. We could also work with subdivisions with small details like that. But yeah, for this, it wasn't really necessary, so I stayed with Dynamesh. And yeah, then with the writing, I made an alpha map in Affinity, then just use the standard brush and drag and use the writing as the alpha. And then yeah, I also wanted to smoothen it up a bit, not everywhere. I wanted to keep some sharp edges on this one. Again, it's all about variation. And yeah, so now it's already taking shape and you could have probably stopped at this stage already. But yeah, I wanted to smoothen it up a bit so that blade, you really see the transition between blade and the sharp edge. And also refine my general sculpt a bit. And always when you use Dynamesh, it will probably smooth up some of your details. So you have to, yeah, go over it again. Again, it's quite a grind, honestly. And I think when you plan beforehand, you can skip a lot of the tedious process. But yeah, there's always something you want to add or take away. So yeah, it always takes a while. But yeah, at this stage, it already looked quite nice and I could have stopped. But we still didn't add the leather wrap, right? So this will follow soon. But at first, I still wanted to sharpen up some of the cracks and refine the details a bit. And yeah, you can really continue to do this the whole day or even multiple days and still not being satisfied. But there has to be an end at some point, right? Especially when you work in production, you can't really spend too much time and you can't refine it as much as you would probably like. And there's always a saying that you can create 80% and the rest, the remaining 20% will take the most time, more than the 80. And yeah, here I started with the wrap, so I appended a helix subtool to this. Then under initialize, I went to the thickness and straightened the curve to have a straight helix. I adjusted the coverage a bit so that the separate parts touch themselves. Then I reduced the subdivisions to 3. I adjusted the thickness curve a bit so that it follows the handled shape. Then I went to make Polymesh 3D, choose my axe and appended the created mesh or subtool. Then with the Z modeler brush, I selected the edge here. Then I went to modify topology. Then I went to display properties and choose double so that we have both sides displayed. back faces as well. Then I soloed it out. I used the Z modeler brush to select our front polys. Then I went to modify topology and delete hidden. And I then turned on double-sided again at display properties. Then I scaled the whole thing a bit down and tried to conform it to the handle. And at this stage, it doesn't have to be perfect as we will be extruding it a bit, but still you want to have quite nice distribution of those. Then under project, I went to project all to project the subtool to the handle. I scaled it up a bit. And yeah, then I used the move topological brush to make it a bit more, a bit more wild. So your wraps won't be perfect. And yeah, we want to break up the uniformity a bit here. So while doing this, you can always try to scale it a bit better to your mesh, or to the handle in this case. And the top part and the bottom part I want to hide under the other parts so that it really looks like a leather strap. And again, for the other ones, you want to break up the uniformity a bit. Yeah, then we are adding a few edge loops with the Z modeler brush. It's basically the same process as you would do in Blender, for example, because you want to subdivide the mesh and you need some supporting edge loops. Yeah, then we are using the move brush again, or move topological brush in this case, to have a nicer distribution. And again, we didn't extrude yet, so this will cover this up a bit as well. But yeah, this is the stage where you want to really position it like you want to have it, because later on it won't be that easy to modify it anymore. And yeah, again, then with the Z modeler brush, we were able to extrude the whole thing. You can take a look at our topology and fix the remaining issues here. Also with the move topological brush. So that it really looks like it would belong there and perfectly position with your handle. And after that, I used Dynamesh. And then I used the clay build-up to sculpt some nice details onto those wraps. So we want to have it looking like really a fabric. And it's quite easy with this brush. It looks quite natural and organic. And we also don't need to pay too much attention about the strokes. You won't see them anymore later on, but you really want to work your way through and sculpt some nice details onto it. As you can see, it already looks quite good. I didn't even do too much, but it also already feels like a piece of fabric. Then I considered this finished, but I wanted to soften it up a bit using the trim dynamic brush. Again, we are going for a worn look, so you want to have some breakup everywhere. Again, as mentioned before, you don't want to overdo it with the details. After this was finished, I went back to the rivets and I wanted to create an outline for that so that it really looks like it belongs there and interplays with the underlying mesh a bit. So I used the damp standard with a lazy brush, or with a small lazy brush radius. And we are doing the same on the other side. So it's just a small detail that sells it a bit better. So they don't look as projected, but really look like they belong there and would have been hammered into it. And at this point, I already liked the result. So I wanted to vertex paint it so it will be easier to texture. I think I explained it before in another project, how to do that. Basically, you enable the RGB in the top and disable Z add and Z sub and just choose the color and then just vertex paint it. And at this point, I just realized that I have mirroring, quite a lot of mirroring, not artifacts, but you can see that it's mirrored and the details on the handle were the same at both sides. So especially on this axis, you could see that. So I wanted to break this up and I used the same workflow. Just clay built up, a bit of damp standard and trim dynamic. And for the wood details, I didn't want to overdo it again. We will be using a wood texture in Instamat, and this will make up for the rest of the details. I just want to have a bit of wood structure and a bit of breakup. So again, that it looks a bit interesting already. So basically finished now. And that was the ZBrush part. Okay guys, this was the sculpting part, and in the next one I will show you how to remesh the asset in Instalot. And I also did the UVs by hand in Blender, so I'm not sure if you want to see that, as it's quite a boring process, but In case you want to see that, just let me know and I'll create a quick video about that as well. Otherwise, the one after the installed one will be texturing in Instamat, and I hope to have the texturing part finished by next week. So the remeshing part, yeah, I just probably do during the week sometime. But for this one, that's it. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions left, just ask me in the comments. Otherwise, see you next time.